Hello again, algebra students. We're starting our second chapter in algebra, which is about inequalities. Our whole first chapter was about equations, things that are equal. So those will be equalities. These are all inequalities. So we're comparing things. We've got a couple of quick problems to start with, comparing using things like greater than or less than, or sometimes an equal sign. By the way, for these signs, the greater than and the less than sign, I know can get confusing. Here's what I usually tell my students. This is a less than sign, and this is an L. The less than looks like an L that got squished a little bit. Okay, so if it can look like an L, that's your less than. Number one, though, those two are clearly the same. We would use an equal sign between them. And number two, a positive number is always bigger than a negative number. So this is the symbol that we would use. This is a greater than. Clearly, it's not the less than. And remember, I know it sounds kind of elementary, but the alligator wants to eat the bigger number. So that alligator would want to eat the 7 instead of the -2. In number 3, we've got a negative number and a positive number. Again, positive number is always bigger. So this is the sign. This one is a less than sign. And again, if we would read this, this would be -5 is less than 4. In number 4, positive number is going to be bigger than a negative number. Same thing in number 5, and same thing in number 6. Today we are writing and graphing inequalities. So sometimes we are going to be looking at these in terms of real life kind of situations or translating some statements into inequalities. So here we've got a situation. We want to take this statement that's written and we want to write the inequality that goes with it, and then we also want to graph that inequality. So they're talking about the temperature in Sweden. So we're using T for our variable. The temperature is at least. At least means it's that much, or it could be more. So it's going to be greater than or equal to -10 degrees Celsius. It's never going to get colder there. And if you remember this was a lot of stuff in 7th grade that you've already done. So -10 is my important number on my number line. Because this has this equal to sign underneath here, that's half of an equation, an equal sign, I would have a filled in circle right there. And then because it says T is greater than or equal to -10, where it goes bigger than -10 is over here to the right. My suggestion for this is, first of all, I want you to notice where I'm graphing. I'm graphing on the number line, not above the number line. I know that in the past, some of your teachers have had you graph above it. I'm kind of a stickler because you're never going to see it graphed like that from a teacher or from a math textbook where they want it to be up above. I understand why we do that, and it's a lot easier to read graphs sometimes, but I do want you to be graphing right on the number line. Second thing is, if you're drawing your own number line, you don't need it to be this extensive. 3 numbers on the number line, and we'll practice some of that as we do some solving later also. The filled in circle, again, remember that means that it could be exactly equal to that. Here's the last thing I want to mention on this one. Because my variable is first, the T is first, that means that this sign, this greater than, points the way that the arrow is going. They're going to match. As long as the variable's first. You can only use that trick if the variable's first. If the variable's not first, you're going to have to do a little bit of work to switch it around to make that true. For the second one, we've got the elevation in Arkansas or in Alabama is at most 2,407 feet. At most means it's not going to be more than that. So my inequality, and it looks like my graph has moved a little bit. Let's see if we can get that to shift a little bit for us. The inequality for this one, the elevation, so we're using E this time, the elevation is at most, so it's never going to be more than that. That must be the tallest point in the state, so it could be less than 2,407, or it could be equal to that. If that is exactly the tallest point, then it's equal to that spot. Oh, and I lost my 7 there, sorry. When we graph this, because this number is fairly large, typically we wouldn't have 2,406, 2,407, 2,408. So we might have to kind of estimate where this would be. This is going to be not quite halfway between 2,000 and 3,000. So we're going to say about there. And if it's a number that's not labeled, I would tend to usually label that. 2,407 is what I would have right there. Because it could be exactly equal to that height, I would use a filled in circle. And again, because my variable is first and the arrow is pointing to the left, I'm going to shade to the left. And I shade the arrow that matches that inequality sign. Here I have 4 graphs that all use the number 1 as their important number in here. 2 of them have open circles, 2 of them have filled in circles, 2 go to the right, 2 go to the left. So we're always going to be having x as our variable. And I want to know what the sign is going to be between the x and the 1. Because it's going to the right and because it's shading to the right, that's going to be a greater than. And because this is a filled in circle, it's also equal to. The difference between A and B is that this is not a filled in circle. So that means it can get incredibly close to 1, but it's never going to exactly be equal to 1. So x can be anything that's bigger than 1, but not equal to 1. So it's missing that half of an equation, half of an equal sign. For letter C, again, we're comparing the x with 1, but this time it's shading to the left. And my left arrow, as it gets smaller, that's the one that's shaded, so it's going to be a less than, and filled in. So it's also equal. And the last one, letter D, is the same as letter C, but it's not filled in. So it's just going to be that x is less than 1. So a couple of vocabulary terms. Now that I've sort of been using some of these already, an inequality, it's a mathematical statement. Up till now, our mathematical statements this year anyway have been equations with an equal sign. So this is still a mathematical statement. It just doesn't have an equal sign. It's going to be comparing the 2 sides of the expression with either less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. Solutions of an inequality, if I give you one number and I want to know if that value would make the inequality true, that's me checking to see if it's a solution of the inequality. However, as you could see with our shading on those last couple of problems, the solution set would be everything that gets shaded for an inequality. So all of the solutions. This isn't just an equation where we have one answer or no answers, or if it was absolute value with 2 answers. You know, occasionally we had answers where in equations where any real number works. That's not the same as this one, but we still do have an infinite number of solutions because as I'm shading every single point going either to the right or to the left of that number is going to be a solution. And then the graph is, again, what we were just looking at, showing that whole solution set, all of the numbers that would be on the number line that are part of the solution. So here we've got 4 different expressions in words, in algebraic expressions, and then also the graphs. Now, when we see the words less than, if I didn't have the word is right here, if we just have less than, that's subtraction. And it's actually the tricky kind of subtraction where we have to flip the order around, but that's not what's happening here. When I say x is less than 2, that's this statement right here. X is less than 2. Because it's not equal, that's why we've got the open circle right here, and less than goes to the left. X is greater than 2 would be almost the same looking graph. It still has an open circle, but this time we're going to be going to the right because those are the numbers that are greater than 2. On the last ones, x is less than or equal to 2 or x is greater than or equal to 2. The only thing that got changed here is we said or equal to. Or equal to. That's when we're getting the filled in circles. That's the difference on those. Here we have some inequality statements that we want to be able to write. We're not even solving anything right now. This is really just translating. So 12 is greater than or equal to. 12 is greater than or equal to 5 times the number n. Now, if we were actually solving this, if we were getting to where we were going to be graphing it, I would want the n first. Since we're not doing that, we're just translating, this is perfect the way it is. Number 2, 1/3 of a number h is less than 15. 1/3 of means multiplied, a number h is less than 15. By the way, if we're finding 1/3 of a number, we could also just say that number divided by 3. That would be 1/3 of the number is less than 15. Either one of those translations would be just fine. For number 3, 7 is less than or equal to, let's just start with that. 7 is less than or equal to the difference of a number q and 6. Difference, remember, means subtract. So q minus 6. The sum of a number u and 14 is more than 6. U plus, that's what sum means, 14, is more than is just another way of saying is greater than 6. If it doesn't say specifically to have the equal on there, we can't add that. 5 and 6 are really just asking if a particular value is a solution, if it would be in the shaded part of a graph. But we don't have to actually solve it and shade it. We can just take this, say d equals 19, and we'll put that 19 in here for d. So I would have 19 minus 7. I want to know if that's less than, question mark, 12. Well, 19 minus 7 is 12. Is 12 less than 12? No, it's not. It's equal, but it's not less than. So that is not a solution. In number 6, if I put the 1 in place of the n, I would have 9 is greater than or equal to 3 times 1 plus 6. So I get that 9 is greater than or equal to 9. Now, if the equal part wasn't there, this one would also not work. But because it says 9 is greater than or equal to 9, yep, it's equal. That is just fine. So yes, it is a solution. Seven and 8, we're graphing these inequalities. Now, in number 7, the x is first. That makes this really easy. This tells me that it's going to be a filled-in circle because it's got that half of an equal sign. So at 3, filled-in circle. And x is greater than 3. The numbers that are bigger than 3 are going to be numbers like 4 and 5. And then we just shade the arrow at the end. The trick on number 8 is that the x isn't first. In fact, I would say take the step to put the x first instead of just trying to switch stuff in your brain. Do you see that the alligator is trying to eat the 4? When I rewrite this, the alligator has to still be trying to eat the 4. It's going to flip the sign because I flipped the whole inequality around. So this is at 4. It's equal, so it'll be a filled-in circle. And this time it's going to be a little less than, so all the way down here. Number 9, x is greater than -1. Not equal to means I have to have just an open circle right there. And then greater than is going to the right. And for number 10, I have that x is less than 1. So open circle at 1 because it's not equal to, and less than goes to the left. In these next couple of problems, I'm going to give you the graph, and you have to come up with the inequality. So it's basically backwards from what we just did. In number 11, remember, I'm going to pick a variable. I'm going to use x's because that's what we tend to do on a horizontal number line. And 1 is my important number. This is not filled in at 1. So I'm not going to get the equal line underneath, but it's going to the right. That's a greater than. Number 12, I would have my x. I'm comparing it to 0, not filled in, so also not the equal sign. And it's just going to the left, so it's less than. In number 13, I have that x is going to be compared with -3. It's a filled in circle, so that means I'm going to get the line underneath and it's going to the right. So my arrow points to the right. In number 14, I have a filled in circle again. We're being compared to +3. It's got the line underneath because it is filled in and it's going to the left, which is less than. So today, your practice problems are going to be worksheet 2.1. You know that the answer key is in Schoology, so when you finish the worksheet, you should absolutely go in there and check your answers and make sure that you're doing all right on all of those. And then make sure that you take the formative quiz in Schoology when you're all done. If you need any help, let me know.